the primary reasons I love sports and that a lot of people love sports is that it's fair for the most part, right? You don't prepare to win, you're going to lose. Or you don't work hard in the weight room, you will suffer from it, right? Sports is a place where the outside world kind of pauses, right? The worries of the world, the general rules of society, they kind of alter, they kind of bend, and it's great. It's great. That's why we love sports. It's that real, it's that visceral, real feeling of winning, losing, victory, defeat. I think it was what's one of those lines, like the pains of defeat and the thrills of victory or something like that, or whatever. Agony of defeat, thrills of victory. That's the idea. That's why we love sports. But with the addition of social media, yes, I'm aware that I'm, was not around much before social media, and I agree that there's benefits to it, but I've also done plenty of research, and I even remember back to the early 2000s sports when there wasn't a ton of social media, right? It wasn't the major boom in social media. It was a little bit different. I understand that perception has never altered real-life sports decisions and outcomes more than it does today. It never was like that before major sports media, before major social media. Outside opinions and pressure matter now more than ever. And I think that's the wrong view, that's the wrong stance to have as sports leagues, franchises, and whatnot. Right? Look at Panthers owner David Tepper. You don't think outside things matter, right? You don't think people saying, CJ Stroud looks pretty good, and you have a small, undersized Bryce Young. Like, maybe we should move off the coach, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's exactly what an impatient owner would do. That lets outside perception matter too much. Right? We let outside public opinions and perception drive what we view as reality now more than ever. For example, and I'm guilty of this too, we let draft position affect how we think of a player. I still have doubts about Dak. He's probably going to get MVP votes. Actually, today, if I had a vote, he'd probably be my MVP. I still have doubts about him. Or about Brock Purdy. Right? So I question Brock Purdy. But I mean, in reality, he's one of the most productive quarterbacks in football since he's taken over the starting role. So what we do on this show to combat that is something called the blind resume game, right? Could be players, could be receivers, quarterbacks. We sometimes do it with coaches. So let's do an NFL coaching blind resume. Let's break it down into record, playoff record, number of top units, right? So is your number of top 10 units, right? Is your offense or your defense top 10? How many times has that happened in your career? And then division titles. So let's go Coach A, Coach B side by side. So you'll see here, Coach A, winning percentage slightly down, right? Coach B wins a little bit more, but in the playoffs, Coach A wins more. Coach A has more top units, 21-16 there. Division titles are equal at 7. So they're fairly equal coaches. Actually, there's an argument that, playoff success, number of top units, negligible difference in winning percentage. There's an argument to take Coach A over Coach B. Well, damn, that's Mike McCarthy is Coach A, and Coach B is Mike Tomlin. There's this perception that, Mike Tomlin's the best. He's a player's coach, and he's that guy. He's got a Super Bowl. Well, so does Mike McCarthy. They both have a Super Bowl. That's why I didn't even put it on there, because they are both won. They have each won a Super Bowl, and actually, Mike McCarthy's beat Mike Tomlin head-to-head in the Super Bowl, if you remember. Right, but this perception of Mike McCarthy is that, he's not the best, he's not really the smartest, and he's not super creative. I'm watching the MVP of the league right now, and they are a real legit Super Bowl contender in Dallas. I'm watching an arguable crumbling franchise in Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, that's just the facts. But let's go ahead and get even more recent. The league's a lot different. Let's just go the last 4 years. So Mike McCarthy's been there for 3 full seasons plus this season, right? So this year and the previous 3 seasons. Let's go ahead and look at those numbers because, again, the league has changed a lot. Mike's got a new team. That's more what Mike is now as opposed to including all the Green Bay numbers. Mike McCarthy's 40-23. Tomlin's 37-25-1. Mike McCarthy's 1-2 in the playoffs. Not great. But Tomlin hasn't even won a playoff game in that span. He's 0-2. Each have one division title, locked up. But it looks like Mike McCarthy could be on his way to another one right now. If they win out, which I think they will, and Philly lose another game, which I think they will, they have a division title locked up. I'm not saying Mike McCarthy is head and shoulders better. I'm not even saying he's better, period. But there's this perception that Mike Tomlin is so much better because he's motivating and he has good sound bites and he's got the Tomlinisms. Can't put 12 pounds in a 5-pound bag. Well, no shit, Mike. You know what you can't do? Lose continuously in playoffs. Lose to bad teams at home 2 games in a row. And get embarrassed on your own home turf twice in 4 days. Right? We can sit here and say, oh, well, Mike McCarthy with the clock. If I put Mike Tomlin in an opportunity at home to play the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs, obviously it would never happen because they're in the NFC, so let's go with the equivalent. How about the Kansas City Chiefs in Pittsburgh? If that even came close in the fourth quarter, it'd be a miracle. The fact that Mike McCarthy was even down to the fact where clock management mattered against the best roster in football is saying a lot more. Mike Tomlin can't even compete. I've actually seen that exact scenario. I've seen Tomlin. Now, granted, it was on the road, but I saw him play the Chiefs in a playoff game. It was embarrassing. Right now, if you gave me a choice, I would take Mike McCarthy over Mike Tomlin. And personally, I don't think it's particularly close. I'm not sure if Tomlin deserves a statue, but I would do a very similar thing that I would do with Bill Belichick in New England. I'd say, Mike, thanks for your services. Maybe you don't get a statue. Here's a plaque, season tickets. You have your own box forever if you want it. Go retire. Go be on TV. You'd be great on TV. We're going to go a different direction. I would personally take Mike McCarthy right now over Mike Tomlin. I don't think it is very close.
Yeah, it always seems that there's a spot on TV for everybody, especially some of those retiring coaches, players, and I think Tomlin needs to be the next one. So there's a lot of things, and I've been thinking about it now for the last 2 weeks. Obviously, right after you watch those kind of games, you start grasping for answers somewhere. There's a couple things that I came across that I wanted to bring up. One being Mike Tomlin has 17 years in the league as a coach. And I think sometimes we get blinded by the fact that he's a winning coach, that he's never had a losing season, right? And people they hear that, and I guess subconsciously in their mind, they just start piecing together, well, they must be a great coach. I'd like to open your eyes to something. Out of the 17 years that he's been the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have won a playoff game in 4 of those seasons. So out of 4 out of 17 seasons, they've had won some sort of sustained success. Yes, and 2 of those were both playoff runs to the Super Bowl. One where they won, one where they lost.
So without the 2 Super Bowl runs, which, by the way, there's an argument that is a coward team led by Tomlin.
Right, so then you have
2 legitimate years.
Out of the 15, if you want to take those.
And I believe the one playoff win was Alex Smith on that rough holding call that I actually disagreed with. Yeah. You remember that?
Yeah.
At Arrowhead. Yeah. Again, Alex Smith. And then one at home against Matt Moore for the Dolphins.
It's bad.
Those are your 2 playoff wins.
To put it into perspective further,
it's embarrassing.
Since the Steelers' last Super Bowl run, or since their last appearance there where they lost to Green Bay, like you just mentioned, they have the same amount of playoff wins as the Pittsburgh Pirates in that time span.
That's just embarrassing.
So there are alarming stats. The whole, he's a winning he's a winning coach. He never had a losing season. I get that, but when has the standard ever been to just have a winning season? Is the standard not winning championships? That's what the standard should be.
What bothers me, too, is he said it. He said me and Kenny, as in quarterbacks and head coaches, are judged off winning. What happens when those start going away? What happens when you now lose to 2 2-win teams in a 4-day stretch?
Yeah, there's big problems.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Florida State thing where it's like, the games have to matter. You're right, the games do matter. I watched the game that mattered in which you averaged 3.5 yards a play.
Yeah.
Right, Tomlin? Winning matters. Yes. And I'm watching you lose games you shouldn't. And it's happened every single year that you've ever been a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
every year without fail.
It's concerning. It's concerning.
It's terrible.
Anyway, great rant. Let's